It was a shocking for some, disappointing for all setback for the Panthers on Sunday against the previously 1-8 New Orleans Saints. But the good thing is they found a way to bounce back from these kind of losses earlier this season. Can they do it again? We'll find out next Sunday against the Atlanta Falcons. In the meantime, let's look back at the good, the bad, and the ugly from the Panthers' loss against New Orleans.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, the part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Today's episode, Locked On Panthers, is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. The Carolina Panthers had a shocking, to some people, but certainly a disappointing loss for everyone involved, losing 17-7 at home against New Orleans Saints. And I had talked about this being a devastating loss as far as the goodwill that was built up over the last week after that shocking, really, win on the road against the Green Bay Packers. Plenty of Panther fans have said to me since the loss yesterday against New Orleans that they saw it coming. Now, I'm sure far more people saw the loss yesterday against New Orleans coming than saw the win at Green Bay coming. And that's the problem of where Carolina sits at this point in time in the minds of its fan base and just the minds of everyone else, just in reality, as they sit here at 5-5, which is a good spot to be in halfway through year or two of a rebuild of Dan Morgan, Brant Tillis, and Dave Canales, and as they continue to evaluate what they have on this roster. But the bad thing is you have such a high by winning last week against Green Bay, then you come back and lose at home against the Saints. And I was looking at it, had they beat New Orleans, you're 6-4, you're squarely in the hunt for the playoffs, and then you have a game against Atlanta, a team that looked better in their loss in Berlin against the Colts in overtime, but a Falcons team that's 3-6, a Falcons team that you beat 30-0. And there was a real possibility that these Carolina Panthers in our Lord year 2025 could have won and been 7-4 playing on Monday Night Football with the eyes of the nation watching. Instead, they lost 17-7 against New Orleans Saints. They did not do any of the three things I told them to do on Friday. We'll review those three keys of victory later on. Dave Canales, Panthers head coach, spoke on Monday. Did not have a ton of enlightening things to say, but we'll go over a couple of things that he did say. But let's start off this show, as we start off every single Tuesday, by looking back at the good, the bad, and the ugly, which certainly not a lot of good, plenty of bad, and losing to a 1-8 football team at home after beating the Green Bay Packers certainly in itself was ugly. But the good, we start off with the positive. The one good thing I could really point to as far as on the field on Sunday, performance-wise, was the rookie edge rusher Nic Scourton. Had a 72.9 PFF grade, had 4 tackles, 4 pressures, and a sack in that game. And it was a key sack that he had there on that 4th down of Tyler Shuck. He's continued to play well and has been one of those young voices in the locker room that I do think will be a leader. Eventually, he did speak to us after the game on Sunday, just about it's one game. It can't happen. We've got to be better, got to be more focused. And that was a common theme throughout the locker room on Sunday of the players that did speak to us following the loss against New Orleans. So your hope moving forward, especially with Prince Umanmielen, who clearly is dealing with something injury-wise. He had missed the Packers game with an ankle, appeared to be injured its groin on Sunday in that loss against New Orleans, and he was at one point in time down on the field after not being able to get to Shuck for a sack. And I don't know whether he was frustrated by the injury or not getting the sack, but he was absolutely emotional in that moment. So not sure as far as Princely goes with his health and how that's going to move forward in the final 7 weeks of the season. DJ Wonnum has yet to show up any category statistically for the Panthers this season. So Nic Scourton's going to have to be the guy off the edge just based off of what they're not getting from Wonnum and what they may or may not be able to get from a Princely Mamiel, who clearly is dealing with something injury-wise here at this point in time, heading into Week 11 against Atlanta. Another good is that it's just one game. And we have seen this team go out and lose to the Cardinals, come back and win 30-0 against Atlanta at home, then go back the next week and lose by 29 points on the road against New England, then come from 17 points down and beat Miami, win 2 straight from then on, go and lose to Buffalo, and then beat the Packers, and then have what happened on Sunday. So it's been up, down, up, down, up, down. It's been a roller coaster ride for everyone so far this season. But again, it's just 1 week. And last week against the Packers was just one game. It felt bigger because the Panthers have not had those moments. But as we all sat there and celebrated the win, I also mentioned, just like with the losses, it's just one game. But it opened up the possibility that more could happen. But it was always a possibility, and for some of y'all, certainty that what happened on Sunday could and would occur, which it did. So you look at it, though, the Panthers, as ESPN is breaking down their tiers of where everybody sits as far as a playoff race with 8 weeks left in the season, 7 games for the Panthers, they're in the stranger things have happened tier, which is not very nice. They're right there with the Houston Texans in that tier. Their chances, according to ESPN, to make the playoffs is 11.9%. So not zero, and their chances to win the NFC South are 7.4%. I would think that their chances at this point in time to win the NFC South are higher than their chances to win the playoffs. Because I look, or get to the playoffs rather, chances to make the Super Bowl is 0.2%. So again, not zero. But as far as you look at the playoff hunt in the NFC, you got the Bears who are right there for the wild card, the 49ers who you play, the Rams right now are in a wild card spot. It looks like in the NFC East, it's only going to be Philadelphia. Looking up north, you got the Packers also in that race. The Vikings are in it. The Lions, of course, are in it. Out west, Seattle's right now in first place in that division. You have the Rams, 49ers. So it's going to be pretty tough in the NFC. And I mean, really every year, but especially this year in this conference, which may be better than the AFC, to be able to get a wild card spot. So for Carolina, when you're sitting here at 5-5, with the game against Atlanta coming up on Sunday, you can very well get to 6-5. And looking at what happened on Sunday was that New England went on the road, won against Tampa, and that now has the Bucs sitting at 6-3. The Bucs the next 2 weeks have at Buffalo and then at the Rams on Sunday Night Football. This could be a 6-5 Tampa Bay team in 2 weeks' time. And if you just look at this week, the Bills, who had a hellacious loss against Miami on the road on Sunday, I'm betting they're going to bounce back and beat Tampa Bay at home next Sunday there in Orchard Park, which would bring the Bucs down to 6-4. If the Panthers can get their ish together, like they did after New England, like they did after Buffalo, and after the 0-2 start, and get a win against Atlanta, they're 6-5 and a half a game outside of first place, and they have yet to play the Bucs. And you would hope the next time they see New Orleans, they're actually prepared to play and they can win that game. So 2 games remaining in the final 3 weeks against the Buccaneers, that can at least provide hope that Carolina can hang in there against some of the other opponents they're going to play out of the NFC West and then take care of business in the division, that they could still win the NFC South this year. I'm betting Tampa's going to win it. I don't think this will be a playoff team, especially after what occurred on Sunday and really throughout the week that led to that loss against the Saints. But still, it's just one game. It's a week-to-week league, 7 more games, 8 more weeks to let things play out. We'll see where they end up. The bad, the running game, of course, 53 yards is the lowest rushing output for Rico Dowdle as a starter so far this season in Carolina. He had 206, 183, and 130 in his previous starts in those wins against the Dolphins, against the Cowboys, and then last week against the Packers on the road. He had a minus 0.26 EPA per rush and a 27.8 rushing success rate. Those were the worst so far of his season. So not really all on Rico. What the Saints were able to do against the Panthers, they actually do have a pretty good run defense, might I add. So that's one of the things where you got to look at it moving forward. How can they counter against some of these teams coming up, as they're probably going to try to go to a lot of the same looks that the Saints had, and Carolina's going to have to find a better counter and be able to open up things on the run game, in the run game, but also in the pass game, which we'll get to here in just a moment. Jaycee Horn and the pass coverage was not good on Sunday. He had a 28.6 PFF grade, the worst of his career on Sunday. 4 receptions for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns that he gave up on Sunday in that game. He took full responsibility, saying that he's one of the leaders of the team, one of the highest paid players on the team, that he has to be better, and it absolutely is true. Otherwise, I thought he's had a really good season, and I'm not really here to dog him for one bad day at the office. Now, if that doesn't happen, he plays well, they don't lose this game in all likelihood, but still the offense did not do anything to help out the defense, but you were not good against the pass. And just looking at it, 266 passing yards is the most allowed this year. Now, I know that Shuck threw for more than that. That's accounting for the sack yardage. So 266 total passing yards in the game. That is the most that they've allowed this year. The 9.5 net yards per attempt and the 17.9% explosive pass percentage. That's throws, completions rather, 16 plus yards. That's the second most they've allowed this season, behind Drake May and the New England Patriots. So Tyler Shuck, New Orleans, certainly is not Drake May, who's squarely in the MVP conversation, and the 8-2 Patriots so far this season. So that's the bad. The ugly, the passing game. I brought this up a couple of times throughout the season during wins and during losses for Carolina. Bryce Young has only thrown for over 200 yards in 12 of his starts so far in his career as a Panther. The Panthers are 2-10 in those games. In his other 25 starts where he's thrown for less than 200 yards, the Panthers are 9-16, including 5-3 this year. So heading to the season, the Panthers were 4-13 in the games where Bryce Young failed to throw for over 200 yards. So for them to be able to be 5-3 so far this season, with that being a continued stat, that is a credit to the roster build, and that they are not uber reliant on Bryce Young and the passing game being highly efficient. But as we saw on Sunday against a 1-win Saints team, if the Panthers can't run, they cannot win, because they cannot win from the pocket. They do not have a passing attack that down in and down out, series to series, quarter to quarter, game to game, you can rely on at this point in time. So until they get that figured out, those results that we saw on Sunday are results that I don't want to say can be expected, but certainly should not surprise anyone until they're able to find more balance offensively, which is something that Dave Canales and everyone in that building is searching for and is hoping that they can find heading into the game against Atlanta and then on out when they play against the Rams, the Niners, the Bucs twice, and of course against the Seahawks and the Saints team that they lost to on Sunday. Then finally, an ugly stat. The Panthers lose as a favorite once again. Saw this from Joe Person of The Athletic. The Panthers, who are 5.5-point favorites, have now lost 11 consecutive games when favored, the longest skid in the Super Bowl era. And that's according to ESPN. So he took that from ESPN. That is just, buddy, I mean, come on. And they're not usually favored, as we know. But when they are favored, at least the last 11 games, they have lost. So the Panthers favored again later on this season, or maybe next year. Go ahead and bet on the other team to get the job done. That is not a good look for Carolina, as, again, 11 straight games they have been favored. They have lost the longest skid in the Super Bowl era here in the NFL. Dave Canales spoke to the media on Monday following his film review of the Panthers' 17-7 loss against the Saints. Did not have a ton to reveal, but we'll go over what he did have to say, some of my takeaways from that conversation we had on Monday. All that coming up here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. If you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and simply don't work together. That's not SaaS. That's sad. Software as a disservice. That's why you need Rippling. Rippling is a unified platform for global HR, payroll, IT, and finance all in one place. They've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. By uniting your employees, teams, and departments in one system, Rippling removes the bottlenecks, busy work, and silos your software created. Whether you want to run your entire HR, IT, and finance operations as one, or just fill the gaps in your software stack, Rippling can do it all. And right now you can get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/LockedOnNFL. Learn more at rippling.com/LockedOnNFL. That's rippling.com/LockedOnNFL for 6 months free. Terms and conditions apply. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back here on Locked On Panthers, Dave Canales, Carolina Panthers head coach, met with the media inside Bank of America Stadium on Monday afternoon following his film review of the Panthers' just disgusting 17-7 loss at home against New Orleans Saints. And he said, quote, "That game was not good enough." And that could have been the end of the press conference, as what else is there to be said about everything that's played out over the course of the last 24 hours here in Uptown Charlotte. Now, obviously, the big topic of conversation after that game is the passing game. And why is it that Bryce Young has not carried over the momentum that he had from a year ago? Now, if you're a believer in momentum carrying over from season to season, maybe you're learning that that's a fallacy, and some guys are just that good. Other guys, it takes them a while, and maybe they're just not that guy. And we're looking at Bryce, at least through the first 9 starts of the season for him, not much like the final 9 starts and really final 10 games that he had in the second half of last year. Now, we'll look more of that tomorrow, as I've gotten plenty of questions in the weekly Wednesday mailbag about Bryce, about the state of the Carolina Panthers quarterback situation with him. I'm going to answer those. So if you have questions that aren't asking me about Bryce Young and Dave Canales, then go ahead and hit me up over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council to get those questions in for tomorrow's weekly Wednesday mailbag. But yeah, look, they're trying to find balance. And that's basically the gist of all that Dave had to say, that they are trying to figure out why those opportunities have not been there, even when they have been there, why they have not been able to execute those opportunities, all of that. And it's not just Bryce. It comes down to the receivers and getting that continuity back, where guys like Coker miss a lot of time. Xavier and Bryce right now really aren't on the same page. Obviously, T-Max played well this season and been the only reliable option. Haven't gotten a lot of the tight end room. JT Sanders did have, I think, 5 receptions on Sunday, so that's a good sign. But overall, just it's not working. And they're going to have to figure it out, because they're aware that this is a copycat league and that all these teams are going to look at the film, see what New Orleans did to slow down Rico Dowdle, and they're going to plan on doing that as well. Not every single team they're going to face is capable of stopping the run. The Falcons are not a great run-stopping team, and we just saw that on Sunday against Jonathan Taylor, who's been the best running back in the league this year. And I mean, they did have some success a little bit against Buffalo, but Carolina's been really good. And obviously, Rico's still 3rd in the NFL in rushing, 1st in the NFC in rushing. That will be a challenge for Atlanta and their defense to stop him. So we'll see if they can find some balance. Another thing that stood out from Sunday that was asked and discussed on Monday was the lack of preparedness and the lack of attention to detail and focus throughout the week. And that's something that Ike Ekwonu, the Panthers starting left tackle, revealed to us on Sunday there in the locker room. And I was sitting there in that media scrum, and it was me, like David Newton, Scott Fowler, Alex Zeitlo, just asking Icky about what happened. And he had talked about just, there wasn't really a focus. I know David had followed up and asked, okay, did you see things throughout the week that led you to believe maybe this was possible? And I gave you this quote yesterday. I'll give it to you again. Quote, we just weren't locked into the small details. A couple of guys spoke about it. Coach spoke about it throughout the week, and you just can't get days back. If you have a tough day on Thursday, tough day on Friday or whatever, you can always look forward, but you can't get that day back. So that preparation or lack thereof is going to add up. And unfortunately, that just cultivated to what we saw today. So for whatever reason, this team wasn't focused and did not have good days of practice. And Dave admitted that that was true, that he had a conversation with them, that he would not, though, reveal what exactly he said to the team, but he was aware that they did not practice well. Now, he's talked about in the past, and this probably happens with plenty of teams in the game of football, not just in the NFL, where you have a bad week of practice, you think you're going to get ass kicked on Sunday or Saturday, whenever it's going to be, and you actually win that game. And he mentioned that it's happened where bad practice week, has actually led to a good game week. Good practice week has ended up being a bad game week. It happens. But to hear that come from a Panther player who hasn't accomplished anything, I'm not saying that Icky was dogging it, but no one on this team who's been wearing this uniform, other than J.J. Jansen, knows anything about what winning looks like here in Carolina. And I saw someone put this out there on Twitter, a Panther fan who was really crashing out there in real time, said, like, this is the kind of thing that triggers them, that anyone on the Carolina Panthers have the audacity to take an opponent lightly, to not come in with focus after a big win is mind-boggling. And I remember sitting there just being like, wait, hold on. And I talked to Alex, like, did he tell us that they weren't focused this week? How is that even possible? So Dave, again, he mentioned, he acknowledged that was the case, and he will evaluate whether they have a victory Monday. I know plenty of y'all are now going to point to, oh, victory Monday. That's why they played so bad on Sunday. And Dave did rightfully bring up that the week prior, they took time off on Monday, and that was coming off of a loss. So he wanted to have that be the same routine. And he has a leadership council he talks to every 4 weeks about it. And he felt like this was the right thing for the team. But after not handling success, maybe it's not the right thing for the team. So we'll see whether that's the case. One more thing to point out that I did find to be interesting as far as the quarterback situation here, not pertaining to Bryce. He's your starting quarterback. Andy Dalton's your backup. But who will be the third quarterback? As you would have seen reported out there on Saturday, Mike White, who was on the active roster as the emergency third quarterback for that game up in Green Bay, he was released from the active roster on Saturday. Dave Canales mentioned that he would be, or that the Panthers would be bringing back either Mike White or Hendon Hooker. My guess, as long as Mike White clears waivers, which I believe would have to be today, that he will be back here on the roster on Tuesday. If he doesn't, then Hendon Hooker will be back in Carolina, but I'm guessing that their preference would be Mike White to be that third quarterback, be the practice squad guy. So that's one other note to look at coming out of that press conference on Monday. On Fridays, throughout the regular season, I give you my 3 keys to victory. Then on Tuesdays, we review how the Panthers did. And spoiler alert, they did not do a great job. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over there at Peloton. Look, folks, it's time to break through the busiest time of the year with a brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus that's powered by Peloton IQ. It's Peloton's most elevated technology and equipment yet that gives you real-time guidance, and it gives you endless ways to move, whether you want to work out by yourself or if you want to work out with your favorite instructor, like my personal favorite, Alex Toussaint. He always gets me fired up to tackle the day. And the thing I like about Peloton, it helps me achieve more in less times. They have features that help you plan, stay motivated, track your progress, and Peloton IQ also provides personalized workout plans and recommendations. That's something that I use right now during the busiest time of the year covering the NFL. They plan my workouts for me based on my mood, my vibe, and also my favorite instructors. So make sure you check it out and use it, because it also helps you correct your form in real time, and it maximizes your reps. It counts your reps so that you can do it smarter, safer, and more efficient. Let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
All right, back here on Locked On Panthers. One final thing we'll do on today's show, as we do every single Tuesday, review the 3 keys victory that I gave you on the previous Friday, heading into that game on that Sunday. And looking back at the 3 keys, it didn't work out. Key number 1 was to ride Rico Dowdle. Now, I did have a little concern based off of Rico being on the injury report, rather, throughout the week. Now, not concerned that Rico couldn't play on Sunday or play well, but concerned going forward, knowing that they're putting a lot on him. And it was going to be the second straight week where he was going to be the guy. No Chuba Hubbard as far as any sort of rotation. Chuba would come in when needed, whenever Rico was tired or if the game was over like it was at the end. They needed to ride him, and they did not do that, as Rico obviously did not have a great game. And I think a large part that's just the Saints game plan. The Panthers not able to counter it, and he had 53 yards rushing after having 206, 183, and 130 in his previous 3 starts earlier on this season. So ride Rico. Big fat X on that one. Number 2 was to get the passing game in order. Brought up some stats about the 17 quarterbacks on the 17 teams who I believe to be in the playoff hunt this season in 2025. And Bryce Young ranked either last or at the bottom of all those major statistical categories that I pointed out when looking at those 17 quarterbacks production-wise. Not saying that Bryce was a bad player, but production-wise had been at the bottom or near the bottom in a lot of those categories, and he probably continues to be at the bottom based off of how things played out on Sunday. If the Panthers want to be more than just a middle-of-the-road team, which right now that's what they are at 5-5, which is fine considering where they have been over the last couple of seasons, but they want to achieve more than that. They cannot continue to throw for less than 200 yards and get nothing out of their quarterback other than sometimes a great fourth quarter game-winning drive, and other times interceptions, fumbles, just it's killing them. It's not enough to be able to just run the football, and that is a great foundation for any offense. But in this league, especially the way things have transitioned over the last decade plus, you have to win by passing the ball. You have to be able to do that, and the Panthers cannot do that at this point in time. The only time they've had any truly effective passing game, well, 2 times. Dallas, I felt like, even though Bryce only threw for 198, but 3 touchdowns, played well in that game. And then Arizona, which was largely in the second half, was garbage time, and a bunch of Cardinals went down with injuries. And eventually, it was like, oh, crap, Carolina's in the game. They can actually win this. And then after that, no completions. Nothing when you really needed it most. So, yes, Bryce has had those clutch moments, but looking just in totality, it's not been good enough, whether it's on Bryce, whether it's on the offensive line, which I really don't think it's on them, or whether it's on the receivers, Dave Canales. They've got to get it in order, because beating Atlanta is not going to happen if you have the same kind of passing hack you had on Sunday and if they stop the run. So that has to improve, obviously, if they want to be anything other than a 5, 6, 7 win team this season in 2025. And then lastly, it was to force Tyler Shuck into mistakes. That did not happen. Tyler Shuck was 19 of 27, 282 yards and 2 touchdowns in the game. The Panthers had a 37.5 PFF pressure percentage on Sunday, which actually was the second best of the season. So it wasn't like Shuck wasn't under duress at points in time. He was. He was pressured 12 times and sacked twice. The only difference is that this week, under pressure, Tyler Shuck was 5 of 8 for 99 yards and a touchdown. Last week against the Rams in his first career start, he was 0 for 5 with an interception. So when the Panthers got pressure, they were not good enough on the back end. When the Rams got pressure, they were far superior on the back end, and they were able to get that mistake from Tyler Shuck. So not being able to force that turnover, because pressure is greater than sacks, in my opinion, because they lead the turnovers. That was obviously another difference in the game on Sunday. So they failed in a big way when it came to the 3 keys of victory. I'll give you 3 more ahead of the game against Atlanta this coming Friday here on Locked On Panthers. But that's going to wrap up this edition of Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe, follow the show free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, where I will be answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions tomorrow. So at me or DM me, either on Twitter or over on Blue Sky at Julian Council, to get those questions into me right now. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always. Keep pounding, and I'll be back with y'all on Wednesday as we'll talk a lot about the state of the Carolina Panthers quarterback position and whether Bryce Young is the right guy, as we have 7 games remaining here in 2025.